In this session, the focus will be to create an awareness about basic financial planning, how to avoid falling prey to phishing and cyber frauds. This will help educators stay updated to plan their future in a better way. This initiative is part of activities related to investor education and awareness initiative in terms of Securities and Exchange Board of India Regulations 1996. Today, we have with us Mrs. Sushma Gauravi, who has vast work experience and has worked with many companies like Grip Invest as a CS and credit administrator, company secretary at Capital Float, CS and manager at National E-Governance Services Limited, CS and compliance officer at Triveni Glass. Your skills are in secretarial compliance and audit, legal matters and treasury functions. We welcome you, madam. We are honored to have you. I would like to welcome our principal, Mrs. Alpana De, in charges, teachers from MRS School and College, Dev Narayan Public School, Sensha Global School, Christy Memorial School and College, Shakun Vidya Niketan, and all the teachers who are present here. No event is complete without offering ourselves to Goddess Saraswati. So, now I would like to invite Mrs. Sushma Gauravi, Mrs. Alpana De, Principal MPBM, and the in-charges for lighting of the lamp, and along with it, Sri Soumitra Guha will render Guru Vandana in Rag Bhupali.
Before I start, I want to wish every one of you a happy Navratri. It's the first day. Let's start. So this is basics of financials and normally a little interactive, so I keep asking you in between a few questions here, what you understand and how you perceive things about financial planning and programs. If anyone can tell me what they understand from financial planning, anyone of you, volunteers. Ma'am?
It's mainly about planning for future. Like till retirement we get the salary, so it's fine. But planning for future that we don't have any problem. So that's planning. So means the investment that you make during your regular work.
The investment that you make during your career or during your job. So, but for future you think about planning for your financial planning for the future.
Very well elaborate, ma'am. Thank you so much. So that is what our next PPT is about. So financial planning means in our normal earning stage, everyone start earning and have lots of money in hand to meet their expenses, for any contingency come across, to children's education, whatever comes in family, they are prepared for that. But after a certain age, when once you get retired, there is no earning for that. For that is actually planning required, investment required. So we have covered a life stage planning in a small PPT, which talks about the age of earning. Supposedly if it starts from 25 and it goes up to 60 years. So between 25 to 60, you are earning and you have lots of things in your plate, lots of expenses to meet. For example, marriage and children, then you can buy home, you can buy a car or anything, a traveling form, can start a new business. Then if someone's planning for a second child, and their marriage, their education. So lots of things come and keep coming in your way. People are so tempted to involve and engage in present things that tend to forget what happens after retirement, and they're not prepared, or I would say well prepared in advance for their retirement ages, which comes after 80 or 60 or as you chose to be retired, and there is no money, no income in hand. So our agenda for this session is to make you aware about that. So, okay, coming to next. See, what is life stage planning? First of all, when we are at early stage of our career, start investing. The first thing I guess everybody thinks about is, to have own vehicle, be it two-wheeler, be it car, whatever you aspire for. But first thing is vehicle, and then, of course, we should keep some funds in our hand, say as contingency fund, to meet any uncertainty comes across. Then in mid-career, at the age of 26 to 50, there is children's education, then there is home, then there is some contingency fund. When we come to the final stage of our career, which is called as prime career, which is between 51 to 60, is children's marriage and of course any contingency fund that follows. At last, post-retirement, we have to maintain our lifestyle because at this, whole of our year, approximately 80% of our life, we have lived in a certain way. Now suddenly, we can't subordinate our lifestyle. We have to live the way we have lived and we look up to that. So to maintain our lifestyle, we need some fun. And then of course, at that age, we need lots of medical expenses, lots of medical things. So to meet that, we need medical fund and contingency fund. So this was life stage planning. Then next is, why do we need financial planning? So till now, after lots of discussion happened and as I have said, we have understood what is, why do we need financial planning? So I've pointed out a few pointers here. One is balance today's need with your goal for future. Today you have some need and you have a goal in future, how you want to live and how you want to look up to, what would be your lifestyle. So we need to balance everything together. Then we have seen Corona. We all have seen what can come and nobody can comment it. Anything can pop up in every other year, market loss, Corona or some other emergency fund. So we have to adapt and change towards the circumstances and need some funds for that. Then we will save money to achieve our goal if we have some specific goals per se. Prepare for unexpected emergency, then prepare for retirement. And of course, very important thing for nowadays is manage for your taxes. Tax management is very much important, and that helps us, keep safe our money and follow the rules as well as a citizen. Then live your life with the same sense of direction and security. Some sense of direction and security is very important because if we are not feeling secure, we can't live a happy life. Then basics of financial plan. Now, what should we think when we are talking about financial plan? What all we have to count in it. So the very small things is where I am now, am I now, where do I want to go, and where do I get here from. These three things to keep in mind. Then come to banking. I hope we all understand what banking is. Okay? So I want again a few volunteers from the MPs. If anyone can explain what they understand from banking. Anyone from there? Yeah, sir, please.
Banking is basically where you are borrowing the money and you are getting a loan from that.
True. So banks, as we all know, is a financial institutions that provide us money and keeps our money safe. It's a accept deposits for us. Is a regulated sector. So banks always are regulated by RBI. I hope you all know what is RBI, that is Reserve Bank of India, that regulates all the banks, all the NBFCs, all private, public, all care across the country. And that's how we can manage our account. So in banking, what all are the options available to us is, one is saving account. I hope everybody understand what a saving account is, very basic. Yeah? People are nodding heads, so I can, anyone can volunteer and explain what a saving account is? Anyone from the back?
Save your money.
Yeah, saving accounts. Yes.
Account in which we deposit our money and the bank pays us interest.
Yes. So that's a good thing. Banks keep our money safe and gives us interest as well. Isn't it great? So yeah, bank savings account is the account where we can open with any bank and we can keep our money as with them lying. It could be a liquid fund, it could be a fixed deposit, anything. So I've covered everything in the side. But I hope before moving ahead, everybody understand what is a liquid fund means and what is a So then again there is a recurring deposit scheme that banks provide, which is a very good scheme. So for example, imagine a case where we want to buy something which is not handy, not affordable for us now. So what we can do is we can start saving monthly as small as 500 rupees, and after 6 months or 12 months we can reach to a good sum, and banks provide interest on that. So the recurring deposit is that kind of facility which banks give. I hope everybody here uses the recurring deposit facility and is aware of, it's a very good secured platform. Okay. Coming to fixed deposit again is a banking facility where if we have surplus funds handy, a good amount we can keep with bank. Bank pays from as low as 6% up to 12%, depend on the tenure and the amount of the fixed deposit. And fixed deposits also have few features. So while looking and going at fixed deposit, we should always keep a few key things in mind. Is my fixed deposit liquid or not? What is the terms and condition of fixed deposit? Because few banks gives a free float on fixed deposit that you can take your money out whenever you want to, and few banks doesn't allow, few schemes doesn't allow. There are also a few schemes called bank tax saver deposits. So we have to understand our need and accordingly deposit the fund, surplus fund we have. If you wish to save your tax, you can go for a tax saver deposit, or if you want a liquid funds for say any marriage is there, any child education is there, anything which is coming up, you can plan accordingly. Then deposit insurance. This is a little different thing from banking thing. Is anyone understand what is deposit insurance? Okay, so for banks, every bank, there is a facility provided by Government of India. There is an institute which is called Deposit Insurance and Credit Guarantee Corporation, DICGC. Now, what this company or organization do? This organization insures the banks. That means a person who is going to deposit up to 5 lakh rupees is insured by this corporation. Your money is insured, nothing will go wrong with the bank, because nowadays we are hearing a lot that banks are in losses or something is happening or some loans are not paid and whatnot. So Government of India has come up with this program where up to 5 lakh rupees for every individual, your money is secured and insured. You will get your money definitely whatever happens with the banks. So this is a very new and great thing. Then quite interesting for today's generation, which is digital payment, quite handy as well. So I want someone from the team volunteer who can explain what a digital payment is. Anyone? Yes, of course. So there are RTGS, there are lots of options available for today. Simply putting up, digital payment means dealing with your e-cash. I mean, you're not dealing with the hard money, hard cash, but you are also making your transaction. It is a digital payment. It directly links to your bank account, either directly to bank account or through any e-wallet, and your payments done in real time. So you can pay to any merchant, for example, any shop, to buy some goods or anything, or any e-platform, as if there are Flipkart, Amazon and whatnot, and 100 of marketplaces. So digital payments simply means that. Now, what are the options for digital payment? So very traditional option going back to 5 years down the line, when there were boom of internet banking. Internet banking supports transfer funds from one bank account to another bank account, irrespective of you have accounts at the same bank or not. So if a person has a bank account in say SBI Bank, and another person has a bank account in PNB Bank, they can inter-transfer. So that is internet banking facility. Now, what are options to do transfer? There are 3 options provided by bank. That is NEFT. NEFT is National Electronic Fund Transfer. Second one is RTGS, that is Real-Time Gross Settlement. And third is IMPS, Immediate Payment Service. Now, these 3 type of funds have different features. For example, NEFT is a electronic transfer. You start your NEFT, there is a limit. Every bank has a different limit set up. Yes, some raising at 2 lakhs. Yes, of course, 2 lakhs, 5 lakhs, you can set up your limit. That depends on what kind of account you have. For current accounts, the limit is higher. For saving account, the limit is lesser. So NEFT, when you issue a NEFT to someone, when you put the entry in your bank account, it takes time. It's not immediately transferable thing. So your bank will process it. Whosoever is your banker looks into it, looks all the details are proper or not, and then process it. So that's how NEFT works. It involves a little time. Then second, coming to RTGS, which is real time gross settlement, and as the name suggests, it is real time. It has service charge linked to it, a certain amount, and you can transfer funds. Then again, as per your limit, you can transfer, from 50 rupees up to crores, whatever you want to, but you should have the limit first. Then third is IMPS, very simple, immediate payment system. This is for short payment. This is up to 2 lakhs, and from bank it will be transferred. Then coming to mobile banking. Now mobile banking, we all have mobile handy, and we all understand every bank has mobile enabled app where you can use your banking, use your account, use all the facilities provided by bank, and that can be used from, basically banks can be operated from your phone. That is known as mobile banking. Then pretty interesting and pretty friendly is mobile wallet. This facility is not very old, as we have the roots from left or RTGS. These are mobile wallets which are booming now, popping up, and after Corona, it's even more, has picked up. So mobile wallets are nothing but a private sector app. There are various private sector players which gives you facility to create your e-wallet by providing them a simple KYC, your PAN, your Aadhaar, and that could be linked, and then this wallet is linked. This wallet has a e-cash, not a hard cash, let's say, and you can transfer funds, receive funds in that mobile wallet. So the players in this are Paytm, Recharge, MobiKwik, Amazon. There are hundreds of mobile app players as well. Then, coming to point of sale. Does anyone understand what is POS? You must have heard about POS machines. Machine is not working or something like that. No? Yes. Point of sale, as name suggests, suppose for an example, X is going to a shop where the person X is using his credit card or cash to buy something. So that machine which every vendor has, in which they insert the credit card, is called as POS machine, and that process is called as point of sale, because that simply is point of sale for them. Where any purchases is made is point of sale. Then unified payments interface. This is very, very Indian. UPI is not available for every country across the globe. This is a thing we should proud of. UPI is developed by our country. And UPI payment is a very unique thing. It is linked with a QR code, which is linked, which carries your CKYC. CKYC means your PAN and Aadhaar detail, your identification, digital identification. And from that code, you can send money or receive money at any point of time, anywhere. And the limit of UPI, as we all know, is 50,000 rupees in a day. So up to 50,000 is very freely floatable, and we can make transfers. Now, what is advantage of digital payment? We are moving towards digital India, and everybody talks about it. So there are a lot of advantage when we do digital payment. I want to hear from you any advantage you see and any benefit you see when you talk about digital payment.
You don't have to carry the cash.
No intention of losing the cash.
You don't have to touch the notes also.
Yes, that is a great thing. You don't touch the note. You are not exposed to any virus, any kind of malware in life. And you are not prone to theft. Nobody can pick up your wallet. You are safe with that. There are various advantages of digital payment. First of all, it is very, very easy, convenient for everyone, and it is fast. It is, NEFT, RTGS, everything is service chargeable based. So everything charges some or other amount, depends on the transaction. But when it comes to UPI, it is free. So there is no service charge, no tax applicable on that. And also it provides a digital record. So earlier when any payment we used to do is to miss, oh my god, I'm carrying some 2,000 rupees, now I don't have, I have to match where the money went and to whom we have paid. But after this, we can have a track of it at any point of time. And it gives one-stop solution for each and every payment. It could be paid to any vendor across India, whosoever has a UPI. Okay. Very, very important. Because digital payments are booming, so we should. Everything comes with a negative side of it. Every coin has two faces. So as there are multiple benefits of online payment, digital payment, there are few points of stress as well. There are few do's and don'ts which we have captured here for you to understand while doing any digital payment. First, I'll come to do's. So very simple, because it is mobile based, UPI is on your mobile, so you have to keep your password, computers on mobile, and remember all the passwords, use password, change your password periodically, and that's all. Always visit bank's secure internet banking site. Don't click on any random link which is provided to make payment. Just go to secured sites also. Log out of your internet banking once you are done. So it is a thumb rule for any online payment, any online platform, be it an app, be it a bank, or you're using from any device. Always log in, and once you are done, log out. Don't keep your system open or your page open for the other time. And if you suspect any transaction which you have not done yet, and you feel it is a malware or it is not right, you can immediately raise a request to the bank and report them that this is what happened. Now coming to loans. We all, because technology is so smart that we tend to not behave smartly, and what we do is we start saving our passwords because it is very, very handy, and it gives us option to save password, and we just save it. But never save your banking password specifically per se, because when you save passwords to a device or an app, it is a history that created, it is recorded. So ideally, never save your passwords to any device for banks or any app which has financial thing to attach to it. Never leave your handset or your laptop free. It is portable and you are somewhere else and your screen is open, because then anyone can use it. Same for phone, never leave your phone unattended, never leave your laptop unattended after use. And never download any app which is not right. If you are downloading a UPI app, a mobile wallet or a bank, always go to a secure, right website. Don't go to any random app and open it, because the link can have your database saved. Okay. Then coming to life insurance, I hope everybody here understand what a life insurance is. And again, I'll ask questions. Can anyone explain what is a life insurance?
If some mishap happens, there's a mishappening. So then there's a coverage.
There is coverage provided by insurance. So very rightly so. For life insurance, what life insurance does is give you additional coverage. You are saving, you are investing. Apart from that, these players provide you facility to ensure your future when you are not there. So thumb rule is, now idea of our awareness programs to understand why it is important. We all understand what a life insurance is, but why it is important, we fail to think about it. Life insurance comes when you are not there to support your family. So imagine a situation where you have not saved enough for your family and you don't have life insurance. What will happen to them? There are children, there are your old parents, or anybody can be dependent on you. What will happen to that dependent person? So the life insurance works in that way, and we have to think about that aspect as well. So thumb rule is, if we think about life insurance and go to buy a life insurance, the important aspect of it is how much life insurance do I need? What should be the amount? So for that, you can count the thumb rule is, life insurance should be 10 times or 15 times your annual income. Now, this is something which you can calculate. There is a example over there. I'll start giving you an example. Suppose your annual income is rupees 5 lakhs. So how much insurance do I need is 50 lakhs. And this should be excluding few factors like loan. If we have 20 lakhs loan, then we need 20 lakh addition of life insurance, because we have to repay that loan as well, or my dependent will have to repay that loan. So I'm adding the 20 lakhs there. Then education expense for children. Of course, there is some education expense after the life, after a person is not there. So education expenses, whatever, it shouldn't be a 10 lakh rupees, it's all depend on person to person. Whatever the expense a person needs for their dependent, to add that cover as well. Then child's marriage, of course there will be marriage. So there will be some expenses, so we need to include that expenses as well. 10 lakh is a tentative expense which we have taken for. And then legacy of family, so family is they have some lifestyle, they are living in a certain way, so they have to maintain that life also. So for them, there is, for example, keeping a budget of 25 lakh. So how much total insurance do we need? Is 1.15 crore. Is 10 times of annual income and all of these expenses added becomes 1.15 crore. So this is how we should plan for our insurance when we are going to buy a plan. There's a slide, a simple slide, which allows you to plan your life insurance. There are all those thumb rules which we have taken in the previous slide, and there's a plan. You can, fill it as per your convenience. What is your income into 10 times, then what loans you have right now, or what will be the expense of your children's education, what will be the marriage expense, what will be the legacy of the family you want, and you have the requirement you wish to. You can fill it and calculate accordingly how much life insurance you need, and then go to choose a plan. Then coming to health insurance. Similarly, as life insurance is after your life, there are health insurance as well, which covers your medical expenses. I hope everybody is aware of what a health insurance is. If not, you can ask a detailed question as well. Yeah? It's sorted here. Health insurance is an insurance policy which pays your hospitalization bill, your medical expenses, your room rent, whatever happens when you fall sick. It basically covers cost of hospital, medicines and everything. Now there are multiple players out there who provide a health insurance, and we fail to understand or fail to choose the right policy for us. For example, there are policies that provides a health insurance, but there is a sub-limit to a room rent that up to 2,000 you will get, but not after that. That sub-limit you have to pay from your pocket. Or there are policies which are not comprehensive, not everything is included there. Few policies include, for example, laparoscopic surgery. Few policies doesn't include. Few policies includes a cosmetic surgery. Few policies doesn't include. So you have to understand as per your condition, health condition, what exactly is your condition and what are you prone to. You can check your heredity from your family, that these kind of diseases are there in my family and I am prone to such disease because of my heredity. You can, check a legacy, understand what exactly is your requirement, read the terms and conditions of the health insurance policy and accordingly choose one. Right? So always go for a comprehensive policy. These policies are a little expensive in nature, but provides you overall coverage, starting from medical bills to a surgery to a room rent, everything. Okay. So this is a very relaxing PPT. Everybody's tired now, so want to relax, and that's how we want to live our life, somewhere at the beach, looking at sunset, relax, no tension in life. But to accomplish this requires a lot of hard work and planning. And we have to, of course, either we can relax and have that kind of life, or we will always be like this, thinking and keeping stress of how things work, how to do it. Securing retirement. What are the challenges when we think about securing retirement? Everybody wants that life, but to plan that life, it takes efforts, and that efforts are listed here. What are challenges we might face? How much we live, we don't know. We are living longer. Healthcares are skyrocketing. Inflation is everywhere. Things are costlier. Things are expensive. But healthcare is even more worse. Healthcare facilities are skyrocketing, and it is beyond the market. Inflation is eating our savings away. Whatever we save, if we save, for example, every year 50,000 rupees, and there is inflation of 6%, for example, so our 50,000 will reduce to it. Our savings is not what we save today. Next year, the 50,000 will come to say 40,000. The value of money is reducing every year, so we have to think about it. And breakdown of social system. Anything can happen at any point of time. So social systems can break down, and we have to think that way as well. Okay, then the simple UN projections is about 2022 today and 2050. What will be our average life expectancy? We don't know how much we can live or what is average life expectancy. So today we are at average life expectancy as per UN projection is 70 years, and they have projected that by 2050 people will live longer and it will be around 74 years. So this is average life expectancy as per UN calculation, and that's how, since the healthcare facilities are good, we are tend to live longer if nothing goes wrong. That's why we have to plan a little ahead after retirement as well. Now, as I said earlier also, healthcare costs are skyrocketing, things are increasing and it is beyond inflation rate. If inflation is 6%, healthcare facilities are going at somewhere 12% or more than that. So this PPT simply shows how healthcare facility changes over the decade and increased tremendously. And there's a Business Today headline also which captures, features the same issue that medical bills are raising faster than inflation. Yeah. Inflation eats away your saving. As I said earlier also, if you save 1 lakh rupees and there is tentatively 6% inflation, then in 5 years your 1 lakh will reduce to 73,000 rupees. In 10 years it will be 54,000. In 15 years 39,500, and in 20 years 29,000. A simple maths calculated at 6% inflation rate. Now, the value of your money, if you keep lying in your saving deposit, keep decreasing. So we have to think about planning smartly how to invest and grow our money. Okay. So assuming this is back. Okay, assuming your current monthly expense is 25,000, taking into consideration annual inflation of 6%, amount will rise to, as I said, 5 years it will be 33,700. So our saving will decrease, and keeping inflation in mind, our expenses will increase, obviously. So if we are expensing 25,000 today as a monthly expense, in 5 years we will need 33,700 to at least be at the same page where we are now. We are not considering here that your living, your cost of living, your style of living can change. But keeping as the same standard of living, you will need after 5 years 33,700. After 10 years it will be 45,400. 20 years में it should be 82,000 3 years. 30 years में 1,44,000, and after 40 years you need 2,57,000. So this is what inflation does. Inflation keeps our expense higher and higher. What we think we need is only this much of money, but what we actually need to manage and maintain our lifestyle and all our expenses is little more. Okay, so what should be the steps when you plan for your retirement? First of all, think and ask yourself a question that when will I retire? For everybody, the retirement age differs. That depends on the family background, the health, the way we want to live our life. Somebody wants to get retired as early as 40. Somebody wants to keep working as early as, as late as 80 years old. So people retire as per their choice. Think when you want to retire first, and then think how long will you live, how fit you are, how long you wish to live. What is your monthly basic expenditure which you need to meet after your retirement? What will be the cost of that expense in future? Because of course, if you have to keep inflation in mind, cost will increase. How much do I provide for my family health care and medical needs? It's not someone will be alone, there will be a family, their medical facilities and healthcare need to think about. And then how much buffer anyone can have for contingency expense. Ask all those questions to yourself and then come to a conclusion that what kind of fund you need for your retirement. Retirement planning is an example. How much do I need to save now? We've calculated one example is imagine monthly investment required to build a corpus. If we want to live for 20 years after our retirement, we need a certain fund so that we can meet our basic needs. So there could be different requirements and different fund or corpus you need to maintain. Case 1, if you need to maintain a corpus of 2.25 crore for your 20 years life, then you need 12,000 monthly. Case 2, if you need to have a corpus of 3.17 crore, you need 16,500 monthly. So this way we can think about what corpus is required for me for one person and then accordingly calculate. So this is a simple example of how to create a corpus. Case 1, we have taken a life expectancy of 80 years. Corpus needed to meet monthly expenses 1.07 lakh for 20 years. Now by calculating 1.07 lakh for 20 years, it will be 2.25 crore. Similarly, in case 2, we have taken life expectancy as 90 years. Corpus needed monthly expenses the same 1.07 lakh. But for 30 years, because 10 years are heading to this case, then we need a corpus of 3.17 lakh. So this is how, if you live longer, your corpus should increase. Okay, so what we need to do to find that corpus? We have to save some of our money and invest otherwise. So only saving will not work because as much as you save in your fixed deposit, inflation will eat up your money. So saving and investment goes hand in hand, and that's how we can manage or maintain the corpus we need. How we perceive today, what we do when it comes to saving. What we do is we earn some amount, we do our household expense, whatever we need. Then whatever EMI, entertainment expense, whatever expense we have, we deduct everything, and whatever balance left, what we save. And that is not the right way of saving. Because now in this case what happens is, if you're not very eligible but aware of what is happening, you're not calculating your budget, then what happens is we tend to expend more. And we fail to save the money, right money, what we need. So how we should do is, we should do income minus saving. First of all, we should decrease or deduct whatever savings we want to, and then whatever left, the amount from that we can have our expenses, monthly expenses, household expenses, EMI, entertainment expense, medical expense, whatever we have. So basically, if someone is earning say 10,000 rupees, just an example. First of all, calculate what is your savings. For example, if saving is 2,000 rupees, then from 8,000 you have to plan your budget. Not plan your budget and then start saving. That is not the right way of doing it. Now, how to save? What is, we have a 2,000 rupee, for example, in hand, surplus. How to save that? Should I keep this money to a fixed deposit? What should I do with this money? So, thumb rule always is save 80% of your saving. From 2,000, deduct that 80% and save in SIP. And why we are saying SIP, will come to another slide for that. Now, how to increase your saving? We all can save a certain specific amount of money. But how to increase that saving? There are a few examples, a few rules to it. First of all, manage your expenses. Don't overexpend everything because saving is important, and be aware of what is going, how it is flowing, and manage your expenses that way. Know what your expenses are. Don't overdo it. You should always be aware of what expenses I am incurring in your future. Keep every receipt. By keeping every receipt, you can keep a track of expenses that happen and understand how many expenses were not required or how many expenses were essential. Then record every expense, of course, very important. Total your expense at the end of the month. Every month is your total or add how much you spend. Do this for 3 months, 2 months, and understand how much is unnecessary and you can reduce it. By following this simple step, increase your savings. is one thing, and if you are saving for 1 month and forgetting it for another month, then again saving, that doesn't help. Saving always should be disciplined. Regular saving works and produces a big returns. And how? I will explain the other side. Ground rule is start as early as possible. Then, when you give your investment time, the saving increases. There is a simple example in the slide which says, imagine there are two persons, case 1 and case 2. Priya has started saving 5,000 monthly. Expected returns are 12%. Now this 12% are return not going to a banks provide. This 12% we have kept thinking in mind that you are investing in different diversifying your investment and we are investing in different sectors. So by this, tentatively, for example, imagine your returns are 12% and time, case 1 is investing is for 20 years. So how much return will get? Total amount invested by Priya, case 1, is 12 lakh rupees and estimated return is 37,95,000 because there will be a percentage amount added and compounded to it. And total value after 10 years, what she gets back is 49,095. Then we are going to case 2, which is 10,000 rupees. I mean double the amount invested. Return is the same, 12%, but the years are lesser. Case 1, she has saved for 20 years, but case 2 has saved for 10 years. Now, though the amount was double, but return wasn't. In case 2, the amount invested was again 12 lakhs, but the return generated was lesser than case 1. Why it happened is because the longer time you give to your saving, the bigger it produces the return. Because savings are compounded on itself. Bank or any scheme where you are depositing your money will give you return on your savings, on your interest as well. So compounding plays a major role, and that's how you can increase your savings. So whenever going to any scheme, think about the longer tenure. Don't go for shorter tenure and high money. Go for a smaller amount and a longer tenure. That way you can increase your savings. Okay, so you know how we do this, how we reach to a 12% amount, what are options available as of today in market to invest are listed as we have saving bank account, we can keep our money, they give around 3% to 6%, depends on amount, depends on the type of facility you wish to. Then fixed deposit as you all know ranges from a 4% to a 12% amount. Then national pension scheme, this is also a very good scheme which provides regular saving and give you a great return. Company fixed deposit and companies fixed deposit in the private players. Government saying there are lots of government saving bonds out there which anyone can go and invest upon. Then there are real estate, bonds, shares, golds and mutual funds. So there are different type of categories where a person can save the money. Over the long term, equity is the best bet. Now, we have given multiple options of saving, but equity proved in 20 years' time, if we see the data, equity proves itself as the best performing bond or asset or investment option. Here is a case where we have included gold price, Sensex and bank equity. There are 3 options there. One is investment in gold, second is investment in Sensex, and third is investment in FD. And we'll see from the historic data, this is actual historic data, what is proved better. So for example, imagine a case where someone is spending 10,000 rupees in these 3 categories. In 10 years, the gold rate only increases to a 6% rate. So imagine if you buy gold, if you bought gold 10 years back, you would now get only 6% interest of it because gold prices are not increasing as much as the inflation is. Then 5 years back, gold was giving a 13% return, and then 3 years back, gold was giving an 18% return. So gold historically proved itself as a short tenure asset. Short time it is giving more returns, but long time it is not giving returns as much as required. Now coming to Sensex. I hope everybody understands what a Sensex is. So many nodding. So can anyone explain what a Sensex is?
Shares in the market.
Yes.
Bombay Stock Exchange software that is called Sensex, where we invest money in shares in Indian and bonds.
Right, I think so. Sensex is not actually all companies' database. Sensex actually provides a 20, important companies database. It is a database of 20 companies only, which are high-performing companies in the market, highly liquid or volatile companies in the market. And based on that, Sensex is calculated. And similarly, you must have heard about Nifty. Nifty is a pool of 50 companies altogether. So that's how the database is created. Now for Sensex, if someone has invested Sensex 10 years back, the return is 16%. 5 years when the return it is giving is 19%, and 3 years when the return it is giving is 23%. Where Sensex is more volatile, so it keeps on changing. Similarly, for Bank FD, the return is 6.95% for 10 years. For 5 years, 5.99%, and for 3 years, 5.48%. I mean, there's no much of a change or benefit for investing in FDs. And the same example also has value-linked amounts to it. So imagine a person has invested 1 lakh rupees in gold 10 years back. He would now sell that gold only for 1,79,000 rupees. 5 years it could be sold in a price of 1,84,000, and 3 years it will be 1,64,000. For Sensex, that 1 lakh will increase to around 4 lakh rupees in 10 years. In 5 years it will be 2 lakh rupees, and 3 years it will be 1 lakh rupees. So that's how it changes. Okay, so this is a simple table of historic data. It's too small, I don't know if you guys can read it. This data captures Sensex returns from 1995 to 2021, which is the amount of Sensex as on last trading day. Does anyone understand what is last trading day is? Okay, last trading day for a Sensex is 31st March of whatever year. So as on 31st March, whatever the Sensex number was from 1995, this is captured in this table, and we are trying to see how much is increased. So I will read a few of columns for you. In 1995, the Sensex was 3,110 rupees in 1995. But in 2021, the Sensex is 58,250 rupees. So we can see the amount of change happened in Sensex. From 3,000 has jumped to now 58,200 rupees. In between, somewhere 2010, the Sensex was at 15,400 rupees. So that's how Sensex is increasing drastically. So imagine a case where we were invested in an equity market, in a stock market, then our amount will increase to this much of percentage. Okay, so this is a simple putting up slide recorded from the previous historic data. What is the value of 1 lakh of investment over the years in Sensex? So 3 years we have seen a jump of 1.6 lakh rupees. That means your 1 lakh will become 1.6 lakhs. 5 years it will become 2.2 lakh rupees. 10 years it will become 3.7 lakhs. 15 4.2 lakhs, and in 20 years of time 1 lakh rupees will turn to 8.5 lakh rupees. That's how equity markets are pushing and growing. Okay, so market is too high. If we see and go and invest today, what we see, what we perceive is no, it is too high. One stock is ranging to 50,000 rupees or plus that. We don't want to or we don't wish to invest in that. But nowadays, if market is too high, then also we can make money. And that's simple example we have covered here. So it doesn't matter what the stock price is, because if it is 50,000, doesn't matter, it will increase even more. So being market high, market is very, very volatile and liquid and it will give you higher return. A simple example here, first June 1997, the absolute return at Nifty for the period is 1,695% and CAGR was 12.3%. In 1st February 20, the market was 11.90, reduced to it. I mean, in 97 it was higher, in 20s it has come down. CAGR was 11.90%. Then in 2007, CAGR is even reduced. The market has seen a dip and it was 9.8%. Then in 2010, again it has jumped to 10.6%. In 2016, it was 15.4%. In 2020, market has seen a high rise and it is gone to 27.90%. So what we're trying to say here is it has come down in for few years, but again jumped up, again picked up. So for a longer tenure, equity is the best probable solution. Now there are few good ways. There's a thumb rule for investment in equity market or in trading platform across. You should start investing when the market has seen its way. Because if you invest in a low period, obviously it will tend to higher and higher. And if you invest on higher side, it will tend to low because that's how market works. You always should invest in low. But what happens if you miss seeing or miss finding out when the market is dipped or not aware of it? Then also there is no problem because for a longer term market always increases. So we have covered a simple example here. Investment date was 3rd January 2000. Sensex was at 5,375. Redemption date we have kept at 31st December 2021. Sensex was 58,254. So somebody who has invested 5,300 rupees would have got 58,200 rupees. Return is 11.5 CAGR, which is not as bank or NBFC is giving, and returns if investor misses 10 best days. Imagine if you have not invested in best days, then also you will get at least 7.4% of return. That also is even higher from bank rate. Now, what is important for equity investment? There are few things to keep in mind. One is you need lots of time to study the market, to understand what is going on, how it's performing, when should I invest, what asset class should I invest. So it requires lots of time to analyze the market. Then it requires expertise to understand what is available. It's not exactly things are available. You have to study the reports published for different companies, different assets, and then you should have expertise to understand that report. And third is you have to be very alert if you're investing in equity market. You require a constant attention. But can we do this? If everybody has lots of time to look at the market? No. If everybody is expertise in that? No, right? We don't have that much expertise to understand the market and how it varies. So here comes mutual funds, which is the best solution. And as everywhere, it is even told that mutual funds are subject to market risk. Please read all the documents carefully. Though we are promoting mutual funds, we are promoting equity market, but please read your documents, what your investment doc says, how this asset is, and then as per your understanding invested. So how this mutual fund performs? These mutual funds are a pool of different segments, different assets, where experts are managing your pool. So you don't need not to worry about what happens if market goes down or which category should I invest in, because there are experts of the field which are advised and managing your pool on your behalf. What are the advantages of mutual fund? You can invest virtually in all asset class through mutual fund. It could be equity, it could be debentures, it could be bond, it could be taxable. Anything you can invest virtually. Mutual funds, because they are managed by professionals, experts will manage your money. So you will be managed by someone else. No need to invest your time or pay in that. This is convenient and flexible, not like FD or a recurring deposit where you have to pay some penalty to get your funds back liquidated. Mutual funds always be market linked, so whatever your market says, that much amount you will get definitely. If your market is dipped, obviously you will get a lower return, but that's completely your market. There is no penalty back to it. These are convenient and flexible. Mutual funds are nowadays very transparent, so you can see how it performs and everything. There are many tax advantages, there are many tax saver mutual funds where one can invest in. Mutual funds are also low cost, so there is no minimum cost. One can start as minimum as 500 rupees, and it is diversified. It is professional managers and they invest in a diversified portfolio. So that's how mutual fund works. And mutual fund always provide a greater liquidity than any other option available in the market. So if you want to buy gold also, that also is not easily liquidable as mutual funds. Next is investment option, which is very government secured traditional investment option, which is called as National Pension Scheme. I'll come to audience. Is anyone understand what is NPS?
You get pension after retirement.
Will get pension. You start saving every month and get pension after your retirement age. National Pension Scheme aims to provide old age income. I mean, once you're old, once you're in your retirement age, NPS will provide the income to its subscriber. While there are options, there are multiple options as well. For example, ETF or ETF, which also caters to similar kind of audience and similar kind of age group people. NPS is an opportunity where a person is investing in the market. ETF and other ETF programs is just saving your money. But NPS is actually invest your money to the market, and that's why return on NPS are much higher than any other such programs. You get better returns. Some key benefits of NPS is this gives you like mutual funds. So NPS gives these two options to a person. Now, these options you can choose while opening your NPS scheme with your banker. You can tell your banker that what mode you want an NPS scheme. Whether you want the aggressive mode. In aggressive mode, 70% of your savings will allocated to equity. In moderate, as much as 50% of your savings will allocate to equity. And in conservative method, 25% only goes to equity and rest go to debt. That means you will get a significant short return. In debt, you will get a short returns. So that's how you can choose your category of NPS scheme as per your risk profile. National Pension Scheme, subscriber can open two types of account, as I said earlier. Regular NPS scheme, where you cannot withdraw money, barring a few specific conditions, they will not allow you to withdraw money, it will be lost. Tier 2, second type of account is open a mutual fund account with NPS, link them, and that will offer you tax incentive also, and it will be liquidated. National Pension Scheme has one more category to it, which is called Atal Pension Scheme, which is launched, and this Atal Pension Scheme has a definite contribution from government. So what happens is, government contribute every month either 50% of your contribution to your account or 1,000 rupees, whichever is lower. That means as minimum as 1,000, government will contribute it for yourself and for first 5 years to all subscribers. Now there is only two exceptions to it. It is government will contribute only for workers and for lower category people who are below poverty line. They are not paying for taxpayer. So if you are not taxpayer, then only government will give you that 1,000 rupees every month. Otherwise, no. Some key features to it. API, there is no joining limit. You can start from 18 years up to 40 years whenever you want to. This is offers joint life pension also. For you and your spouse, it can give pension to both. Minimum guaranteed pension is between 1,000 to 5,000. Return of corpus to nominee, I mean whatever your corpus balance is, it will give to your nominee after your both of your, God and your spouse there, it is your nominee. Okay, funds suitability. Now we have to choose our fund as per our choice. As I said, MPS gives option to be aggressive, to invest everything in equity capital, or to be moderate, invest everything in a hybrid nature, 50% in equity, 50% in debt or conservative options, or conservative investors who can invest majorly in debt which are secure and with absolute guaranteed returns. SIP. Now, since everybody not understand equity and not that aggressive to invest, not that aggressive to risk, take the risk, because in equity or in market you have to manage your risk as well. So SIP is antidote to every retirement solution. It is actually gives you a platform where you can invest, but it is guaranteed and assured also. So to overcome this vagaries of market that it is volatile, it may evaporate, my money will it be return, will it be absolute return, one can go to SIP. So what is SIP? Is anyone here understand what SIP is? Systematic investment plan, and nobody is investing ideally. So you are investing but not, my audience is quite. What's wrong with you? It's just a sleeping time, so everybody is a little sleepy after classes. Okay. So for SIP, yes, it is systematic investment plan, and it's give a person flexibility to invest in small amount every month and then save. Start saving. So how the diamond corpus will vary with the change in return and investment horizon. Basically what we are trying to capture is if you are changing your corpus, how you should start thinking of saving. If you want to build your corpus in 5 years, total investment what you want to build is 3 lakhs. You have to do monthly SIP, you can do monthly SIP of rupees 5,000. It will give you 8% return and your corpus will be 3.7 lakh. In 10 years, your corpus will be 3.9 lakhs, and for 12% will give you 4.1 lakhs, 50% will give you 4.5 lakhs. If the same 5,000 invested for 10 years, total investment will be 6 lakhs, then at 8% you will get 9.2 lakhs, 10% 12.3 lakhs, 12% 11.6 lakhs, and at 15% you will get 14 lakhs, and so on. So SIP, because it has different percentage rate, your return will change depending on that. We are talking about SIP, we are talking about market risk, we are talking about everything, so we have to be well aware of market frauds as well. There are lots of fraud happening all around us and we are not aware of that. So we have categorized type of fraud that can happen. First of all, what is known as mass marketing fraud. How it happens is you will receive a mail with a link which looks legitimate, which says everything about your investment and everything, and you click on that and lands on a wrong page, which is a market, a wrong website. And they ask you either to buy something, some asset, or to donate fund, or to invest, and you fall prey to the advertisement and the link and go and give your data there, which is a kind of mass marketing fraud. Then the second category is credit and debit card fraud. It is very simple. We all have, got a call, hundreds of calls about credit card, debit card. They will give a very lucrative returns that are tickets to January and whatnot, and we fall prey to it. Companies offer these kind of facilities, but they ask for PIN number, which is wrong, OTP, which you shouldn't share. So for credit and debit card fraud, if someone calls virtually and asks you for your details, which is linked to your bank, your PIN, your OTP, and that's where they're saving your data. Then again, which is very popular among the market, is network marketing fraud. And how this network marketing fraud happens is one person starts a business and calls another person to join the business, buy some product, and they request you to engage few more people in their market, and it is a kind of chain activity where they they tell you they will give some percentage if you get few more members who are scheme and so on. Every member will get some advantage, and after few years, 5 years or 10 years, whatever they have realized, they will move away from the market. And that's how network marketing fraud happens. Then there is lottery scam. There are multiple ways. I think one of us must have received where they say you win a so-and-so lottery and you have to fill the form and give some nominal amount to get this lottery in your account credited. And what we do is what we give there our data, our identity and our bank account details to them. Just we fall prey to the lottery scams that are happening over the market. Then types of fraud continues. This phishing links, there are multiple phishing links that looks genuine, websites that looks genuine. There are SMS circulating, emails are there, or social media platform where there are other advertisement kind of giving where we click the link and give our database, which is a kind of wrong to do every time. Then there are phishing calls happen. There are multiple calls we are getting from so-and-so company and giving financial details of us which we shouldn't do. Then ATM card skimming. This is very, very dangerous, ATM card skimming. So what happens is few of ATM machines, they actually install a kind of camera, small camera towards it. You can capture your PIN code and your card details, and then your card details and your PIN code is with them as well, and they can swipe your money away. So ATM card skimming is a kind of very dangerous fraud we should be aware of. Always do your ATM transaction properly, cut the button, remove the card, look at surroundings. You check for it whether there is any camera installed or not before using ATM cards to any machine. Skimming of ATM card, there is no such option. Banks are still trying to do this, but there are multiple cases in which banks have found very recently. So for ATM cards skimming, the only option available is don't go to all random ATMs, go to your bank's ATM, which is connected to your bank, and then use it, because that is at least monitored by bankers. Don't go to any random ATM at a random place where nobody is watching that. The only solution for ATM card skimming, because the cameras are so small that it is not easily identifiable that there is a camera installed in the machine. So this is dangerous, and that's how we can avoid ATM card skimming.
Like you just said that we don't open the lab. If we just open and don't give any information,
That's okay. If we open and don't give any information about the device or anything, then it is okay. We should avoid opening such links as well, because that links capture your IP address as well, which is another IT fraud which is happening. So that is also not advisable. But yeah, if someone has opened it by chance, so just as soon as you open it, just delete your history or cut the link and page. Be aware of fraud and how to avoid them. Be aware of types of online fraud. Be always alert what you're opening, what you're seeing, what you're pursuing, what kind of information you're giving to them. Make sure your internet connection is secure. Just don't use for the free internet everywhere. Just because it is free by using the internet, we all are doing that. That is very obvious to happen. But don't use your at least badly use on a unsecured network. Always go and use a secure network. Open only apps which are verified. You can see a green tick on the app, and then only then open that. If you lose your debit card, credit card somewhere, just report immediately and get it blocked. Change your password time to time. There are few more safeguarding to it. Refrain from downloading any file, any folders which is unfamiliar. Don't share your password, account details to anyone. Don't fall prey to freebies. There are lots of websites which offers free gifts, free things which takes your KYC or your details. Don't fall prey to it. Don't go for heavy discounts if it is not worthy enough to give your data. Check domain name, email ID before open any mail. That was your question, ma'am. If there is any mail, just check the domain ID. Because domain ID, see, you can identify whether the mail is correct or not. So always check if there is .in ID or then you can open it, otherwise not. Immediately contact police or go to court if you found any suspicious activity happening near you. Then we come to a very common facility which banks, mutual funds, and all the investment websites or across platform provides, which is a nomination facility. Now, what is this nomination means? We have all have seen in our bank somewhere that we have to fill a nomination form. This is a simple facility which helps us to, get not overburdened by banking fee or banking procedures, formalities after something happens. What happens is you can nominate any person, your legal hire, your children, your spouse, your parents, any person who can operate and get benefit of your scheme once you are not available, once you are not there. So that's how we can nominate. It's a very simple form which banks gives. They ask the name and the KYC of the person who you wish to nominate after you, and they easily include their name. So facility that enables individual to nominate a person who can claim your investment proceeds held by individual or the redemption proceeds that are any in the event of death once you are not available there. If the investment proceeds are held jointly, imagine there are two persons who are jointly holding the investment and both unit holders are investment together nominate. Both can nominate one person, third person obviously, to get your returns if both of them has not there. Then nomination can be made either at time of initial application, which is very simple, and suggested is always to have nomination done at the time of investment only, or you can do it subsequently also after your scheme. Nomination can be changed at any point of time subsequently also with a smaller kind of form needs to be filled. Now, why this nomination is important? As I started and said earlier, is nomination is a facility which allows you to simply add a person who can claim your proceeding on your behalf. Now, if we are not appointed nominees, then what happens is nomination proceeds will go to your legal hire, and the procedures itself are very complicated. So banks will have to charge a processing fee to add nominees or legal hires, and then only they will give the proceeds to you. It takes simple 5 minutes to add nominee rather than going for that detailed procedure, and once you're not there, nobody is aware of what all proceeds you have probably. So how they will go to a bank, and the procedure and formalities also are quite high to add nominees after a person is not there. So it's always advisable to have small nominee names added to your bank account, to all your financial schemes, wherever and however it is. There could be many grievances when we come to financial world. There could be many problems which we face. So what we do when we face any grievances, what are the solutions we have? All that will be covered here. For banking products, you may reach to banking ombudsman. That's a facility provided by all banks. If you're not happy, you can ask for resolution. For capital market and stock market, SEBI operated system is there, which is called as CORS. It's a simple website where one can go and register their complaint about any company. If you have complaint related to insurance policy, you can go to our IRBI Grievance Management System, which is known as IGMS. Again, it's a website, and lodge your complaint. If you have any complaint related to NPS, you may reach out to PFRDA Ombudsman. And PFRDA is the Ombudsman for PPF, NPS, all these kind of schemes. Now coming back to summarizing what we discussed, everything is financial planning is very important, and it is key to secure our retirement. In long run, we have seen 20 years of data of Sensex, and in longer run, equity is the best option to beat inflation. Regular investment through SIP is ideal for everyone who doesn't have expertise knowledge of stock market. Protect your life and health insurance is always advisable. Whenever you are investing, be an informed investor. First, understand, read the terms and conditions, understand what you are going to invest, where you are going to invest, what is your requirement. Be always informed investor before investing. Use digital payments smartly. Use it because it is very convenient, but be very mindful that what they are using. Raising grievances through a proper process only. Don't just go call the customer care and raise grievances. Wherever your grievances are raised at a proper channel. And there's an acknowledgement PPT. So this seminar is supported, organized by L&T Mutual Fund. And as we all are aware of, there's a L&T Mutual Fund is out there. They provide mutual fund services. And you can see the website. The website link is also given there in the PPT. You to fill a simple KYC and can start investing. And in case of any grievances, you can go to another link which is provided there is www.scores.gov.in. This link is for grievances. No problem, I can give you the link separately as well. Okay, so happy investing and here we have. Hope this is a knowledgeable session. I request you all to give a feedback on the link which is provided before the session. And yeah, this is the feedback. If someone has missed to give the feedback. Happy investing everyone and thank you for your precious time. All the best.
Now I would like to invite Mrs. Rajalakshmi Bhalia to extend vote of thanks.
It is very difficult to give thanks to someone who has given such an informative session. The session was complete and I say thank you so much, ma'am. Right from kinds of investment we use for investment to even the frauds that would occur in those investments. You have made a very complete study of it. Thank you so much for giving us such good total cover of the investment, Sylvie. And of course, not only investment, she has even gone further to give us the benefits of insurance also, which we normally do not think as investment, but as the requirement today. Especially health insurance and life insurance has also been covered by her in this thing. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you to all the teachers who have given us such a patient hearing. Thank you for coming to our school. session. Thank you in charges,